And I've always loved this place, really, but I don't know, I'm just not sure where it's headed at the moment. And, I mean, frankly, I'm not sure many Americans do either. And I don't know anymore if this is the country I fell in love with. Which is why I want to go out and find out what's going on out there. Are Americans happy?
Thank you for joining us here at the Guy Boudreaux Radio Show. Our special guests today are the producers of a new documentary called This American Journey. This American Journey is about two individuals, Paul Blackthorne and Mr. Basquali, that decide to trek across America, checking America's pulse, one interesting individual at a time. And what brought this on was to really get a sense for what Americans were thinking with the economic downturn and all of the stuff that comes, or the muck that comes along with that. So without further ado, let's get Paul Blackthorne, Mr. Basquali, and Cameron Fletcher, one of the producers, into the studio. Paul, let's start with you. Tell us about your current project you're working on. I believe you're working on a show by the name of Arrow. I believe it airs on the CW. Let's break into that, and then we can get into This American Journey.
Well, Arrow keeps me busy up in Vancouver, running around Starling City, being a detective, Quentin Lux, trying to look out for his daughter and the rest of Starling City, doing the best he can.
And the only reason I bring that up is because I thought it's very interesting to see the stark contrast between the world of Hollywood and actually getting out there and pulling your sleeves up and staying in very small to seedy hotels in order to get a message from the rest of America. But I'm gonna back up a little bit, and maybe you guys can tell me about the inception of this project. Who wants to take that on?
Should I start that one?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, akin to what you were just talking about there, Guy, you know, I mean, a lot of my world is spent in Los Angeles or New York, or certainly was at that time when we just before we shot this film, and you know, America had gone through a bit of a downturn on that economic front, and a lot of people questioning the country and such like, and as I was myself, and felt that I didn't really know how I was feeling about the place, but felt that there was only one way to find out, really, and given that I, as I said, spent most of my time on the East Coast, in Los Angeles or New York, I didn't really feel I had a fair idea of what the country was about. And the only way I could really find that out is to go out there and drive across America and find out for sure. So that's what it was about, sitting in New York and sitting there going, well, it's all very well New York and LA, but I want to find out what's going on in the rest of the country and how it's feeling about America. So I just met Basquali a few weeks prior to that, and he decided that, we decided it would be nice to do the thing together, so off we went.
Okay, that's very interesting. Where did you two meet?
Well, we met in Brooklyn. I own a cafe. They're called Smooch Cafe, and it's a little in a little neighborhood called Fort Greene, and Paul happened to be living there at the time, and he came into the cafe one day, and I made him a cup of tea, and then we just struck up a conversation, and he was telling me about this idea of his to drive back to LA. He'd been just finishing working on a TV show in New York, and was thinking of driving to Los Angeles, and that's something I've always wanted to do, and I thought it was a really great idea that he had, and you know, I offered him my services to tag along and be the official tea maker for the crew.
Chai walla.
And yeah, the chai walla, as they call them in India, and as you may well know, the English are very fond of a good cup of tea, and so when I offered my tea-making services, it was hardly something that was that he could refuse. And next thing you know, I'm in a car with him.
And then after that, we realized, well, you know, Basquali takes a pretty good photograph, and you know, might be pretty good with a Super 8. So after the tea-making services, we realized there would be other things he'd be useful for too. So it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I saw that. Like I said, I saw the film. That's why we're having this conversation. So it was pretty interesting to see it all come together. So Cameron, what's your role in this as the producer? Was it tough bringing everybody together? What was it like pulling the crew together and trekking across the country?
Well, actually, Paul really pulled it all together. I came on officially a little bit after they had finished the road trip.
Paul, what was one of the most eye-opening conversations you were able to have with our fellow Americans traveling, across the country? Maybe give me your top 2 or 3.
Well, everybody is pretty much, we'd all answer the same, I'm sure, in that Kyle at the NRA gun show was certainly the most unexpected in a way, and it kind of summed up the whole trip for us because, there's certain places you are with certain types of people, and, we all go into our prejudgment sort of mode. And be like, well, we're down here, and they're talking like that, and they dress like that, so what are they going to know about this, that, or the other? And you notice in your own mind, all the prejudgment going on. And Kyle sort of personified that whole thing, really, because that whole aspect, because, you trot over to a gun show that we woke up in a motel, and as would be the way a lot of the time, you'd wake up and see, well, where did we end up last night? And we're like, oh, my God, we're opposite a gun show today. Great. And you think, well, here we go, the gun show types. And the stereotypes that we associate with that. And, us small-minded people were shown up there because when we started talking with Kyle, he was an extremely open-minded, liberal-minded person who felt, to quote him, that you don't need to sling lead down a range to get your point across, and we should just sit down and talk and America shouldn't necessarily go around controlling the world or attempting to control the world in the way it does when it doesn't know so much about certain cultures. And then, his great revelation was his environmental leanings, talking about, wind power turbines being beautiful. And, it makes sense to harness, nature's energy by the day and, use it for the night. And you're sitting there with this guy with an NRA hat on with, guns piling, marching back and forth all around us. And you're thinking, wow. I wasn't
and also, we should also add that he had just returned from a 4-year tour of Iraq where he was a weapons specialist.
Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he wasn't a tree hugger. He wasn't a tree hugger.
No, he wasn't. I tell you.
No,
yeah, you got to be you got to be a tough son of a bitch at certain times to be a contractor over there in Iraq.
He was no tree hugger, but there you go. See, because obviously we're as people we're often compartmentalized, labeled, divided up in such ways, and for other people's purposes, I think it's easier to have power over people if you can divide them up a little bit. And what this trip illuminated to us was that what we have more in common than we have different, and there was just a beautiful example of it. You might see a guy with an NRA hat on a gun show, but I actually got more in common with that guy than I had different, to be honest. Whether he's a weapons specialist or NRA member or whatever, So that's what a lot of the themes of the film was about. Was just recognizing commonality rather than difference. And if you do that, you probably got a bit more chance of getting through tough times as we are now. So let's dwell on the good stuff, and that increases our chance of getting through the bad stuff.
Right.
So. This is what we need in these times. Not like, well, you're this and you're that and you're this and you're that and all this derogatory stuff. It's like, okay, guys, we're all in this together. What have we got in common? How are we going to get through this? So, call me old-fashioned.
So, is that the conversation you had when you approached those individuals? What was it was it Tennessee or Nashville? The gentlemen that were working they had the metal detector.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to talk about that?
Behind the Lorraine Motel.
Yeah, those guys were pretty aggressive. I mean, tell me about that. Tell me about that experience, because that was one experience that I really noticed when I watched the film. I watched your body language change immediately, because their thought processes were really old school 1960 American, 1950 American. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, feel free anybody to elaborate on that.
One of the things we wanted to do as we went about this trip was have a very sort of apolitical, amoral sort of stance on the whole thing. It's like, you know what? I'm just me. Basquali's just him. We've got our views and opinions, but that's not what this trip's about. Let's just see what the people out there are talking about and what makes them tick and what makes them happy and what they feel like a good idea of a happy life is. And, whether we were confronted with positive stuff or obviously in this case, seemingly, pretty negative stuff, you know, we were pretty determined to still take that sort of middle ground. You know what I mean? That the middle way, and let these guys talk and tell us how they feel about certain aspects of American society. And personally, that it was very challenging to stay in a very amoral sort of place during that interview, which did go on for about 45 minutes. And it was a strange experience because I had so many things I wanted to say to those guys, and for the sake of the film, that wouldn't have been really appropriate.
Right.
So we just, you know, I just listened to what they said and asked them to talk some more, and I felt a bit peculiar doing that myself because it almost seemed like I was encouraging some of the attitudes they were expressing, which obviously I wasn't, but I wanted to hear what these people had to say about this, that, or the other. And it was obviously pretty controversial what they said, but, you know, at that point it wasn't for me to judge that. It was for us to speak to people and commit that to film, and that's what we did. And as we walked away from that interview, I myself felt nauseous, basically. I remember just feeling sick, and it's just horrible. And there's actually an amazing moment in that, and it's in the interview in the film, where Basquali comes over and he says, "Hey guys, I think we're losing the light. We need to, you know, move on." And, you know, as a metaphor, you know, it was totally unintentional, but at some point when we were editing, it was like, wow, that's interesting that he said that, because, my God, if ever we were losing the light, it was in a moment like that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And
that's what I meant, Paul.
That's where you
is that what you meant when you said it at the time?
Yeah, at the time, yeah. I thought I wanted to kind of break out and have a real kind of profound moment, impact on the film. I thought, wow, this is a really great way to do it.
Yeah. You just saw the f-stops on the camera going down. You're like, oh shit, we're losing the light. But that, you know, that was obviously, yeah, it was a profound moment in a way. And but the thing is, you know, you couldn't, if you were writing a narrative script, you know, to put that conversation and those kind of characters and what they were talking about behind the spot where MLK was shot dead would be too much. You know, you'd be like, well, that's kind of pushing it a bit, guys. You know, that's milking it a little bit much. We couldn't do that. And obviously, you know, Here we were in a documentary where things were happening for real, and that's how it happened. It was very, it was a strange one, you know.
You had some really, you know, uplifting spots as well. You know, there was a gentleman that was from the Los Angeles area. You had interviewed him, and he gave some pretty, I believe he's a teacher, and he gave a really compelling, he articulated himself very well about you know, humanity in regards to you know, I think his statement was something to the effect that he tells the kids that he teaches that you're not your mother, you're not your father, and you're not your neighborhood. I thought that was pretty profound. So
yeah, it was very profound.
Yeah.
Charlie, do you want to talk about that?
He was a school teacher named Kevin, who grew up in the Appalachians in Tennessee, and then ran away from home when he was, I think, 14 or 15, because he couldn't stand the environment that he was living in a very toxic environment with his father, and so he fled to Los Angeles to teach Shakespeare, to teach Shakespeare, and then many years later he returned to the Appalachians and started teaching young kids in the area where he grew up about teach them Shakespeare, to try to teach them that there's more to life than their immediate surroundings. And he was incredible. He's actually my favorite interview in the film. Just the way that interview unfolds. I mean, I've seen it many times, and I still kind of cry when it gets to the end of the interview. You know, it's just very raw emotion, and I don't really want to go into what he says, because it will it'll be a spoiler. But you know, it was he was a lovely man, a beautiful man, and you know, the way that we met him was we were in Louisville in Kentucky, and before we were going to get on the road, we thought, let's go to the Muhammad Ali Museum and just and check out the Muhammad Ali Museum. And it wasn't even to film anyone; it was just to kind of go and check it out for ourselves. And then, as we were leaving, it was started to snow quite heavily, and he was just waiting outside, waiting for the snow to subside. And Paul started talking to him, and we ended up getting the camera out and interviewing him, and it just ended up being just, for me, my favourite interview in the film.
Wow, that's incredible. I love it.
I think that's what was so. That's just amazing, really, because here's this English guy and this Australian guy, sort of going up to everyday Americans, just folks on the street, and asking them if they'd give us their time and tell us about the neighborhood, the area we were in, that they were living in, and then how they felt about America, and everyone was so generous and open. And enlightening, that what we learned off everybody was so uplifting and so inspiring, and just from such unlikely places, whether it be the gas station or the cattle auction or the gun show. Do you know what I mean? There was just so many unlikely places, and it just sort of I don't know, it just sort of says a lot about life, really. That maybe you don't have to go so far, sometimes just to sort of to see the light, to feel the light, to feel the inspiration of people. And you just got to listen to people sometimes, just sort of shut up and listen to people, and then, you'll be surprised what you might hear. And it was just wonderful hearing all that, all this stuff from such unexpected places. And, whether it was Kevin in Louisville or, as I say, gas stations, gun shows, cattle auctions, or,
Yeah, I always say all we are at the end of the day are the sum of our experiences, and clearly each individual has their own or defines themselves by their own set of experiences, but they all articulate their experiences differently, which is what I thought was pretty profound in regards to this particular documentary. There was an African American gentleman I think you guys met at a gas station that was very interesting as well. And
Alvin. He was a guy who pumped gas in Smoketown in Kentucky, and he had some great pearls of wisdom about global warming and about humanity's how humanity is going to face the challenges and problems that we have as a world moving forward.
I didn't expect him to be as articulate about.
What was it he says? He says, you've got to remember that, what you're doing in your town what you're doing in your life is going to affect somebody in the next town, in the next city, in the next country. It's just like, just don't forget, be responsible for your actions because it affects somebody somewhere, and you're like, yeah. And this is the gas station attendant in Louisville one night, and in Kentucky one night, and he's reminding us of that. And he's just like, thanks for the reminder, man.
He also, I just want to say something on that. He also is kind of like, for me, was a reminder that the thing that I kind of learnt or got out from the road trip in this project was that I found that I'm so judgmental about people, and that over 50% of the times I'm wrong, because we would, and you said it yourself there, Guy, when you thought you didn't think he would be so articulate, right? Because we have an assumption that a guy who's pumping gas in the middle of winter, standing in the cold and who doesn't have a front tooth, is going to be, isn't going to be articulate or isn't going to be incredibly insightful and wise. And he turns around and he is. And we found that, I found that, happening every day with people, every day. And it's just, it's an interesting kind of question to ask, well, if we're all doing that, what are we missing out on?
I had an interesting experience when the guys were in New Mexico. I had gone off to go run an errand for them, to go find something they were looking for, and I came back and they were interviewing a guy in overalls dirty overalls, and he had a very red neck on which the word red was tattooed. And I instantly made a judgment. I instantly made a judgment as to the way this person thinks, the way he runs his life, and I was very much put in my place by what ended up what I ended up seeing in the editing process after that. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from this film is how quick we are to judge and how wrong we can be.
And then as Basquali just put, then what you're missing out on as a result of doing that,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think all too often, so many people are afraid of the word hello, and we get so boggled, we get boggled down. But it's amazing the people you can meet by just saying hello, and I think that's exactly what you guys did in a very non-threatening manner. And even the gentleman that I believe I think he pulled his hamstring getting a lap dance somewhere in the middle of America, but he was very apprehensive, and it was just that you're on my property. But the minute he started to actually have a conversation with you two, it was like you knew each other for forever. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, I'd just like to make the point as well, actually, Guy, it wasn't just a lap dance accident, it was a nasty lap dance accident.
Hence the pulled hamstring.
You've got lap dance accidents and you've got nasty ones, and his was a nasty one. So, that's the other thing, actually, just to say, because, if one was reading what we're talking about now or listening to this, it might sound a little sort of weighty and a little heavy and lots of lessons to be learned and holier than thou and da-da-da-da-da and all this sort of stuff. One of the things with this film is that we walked away from it, or I think the audience walks away from it, with a lot of questions being asked about themselves, but at the same time, it's Basquali and I in our approach, I think, on the road, it's not like, it's got a cheeky sort of irreverent sort of aspect to it too, and Basquali asking Ronald McDonald if he met Colonel Sanders, and such like what his favorite movie is and all that stuff. We've got there's some light stuff to it as well, and as epitomized by Richard Caligiuri that you're talking about, who had some wonderful views on how America should be run, so much so that he decided to make a big stand on that one time, which I won't give away now, but you'll be quite surprised at the stand he took in terms of the changes he wanted to see in America. But yeah, one of the funniest things in his interview was talking about his nasty lap dance accident after a couple of cognacs and a sherry on the bales of hay after they'd shut up one afternoon, outside the Dairy Mart. So there's some hilarious stuff in it as well. There's some, and the girls in Louisville as well, the African American girls in Louisville.
Yes,
they're just brilliant too. They're kind of one. Every time I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, I forget these guys are my favorite. Just the way they would, the things they were talking about, and just get a grip, and don't throw yourself out the window, and just do what's got to be done. Just man up. They were just talking about various aspects of society. So there's a lot of fun in the whole thing as well. Do you know what I mean? And we had a great director of photography, John Tanzer, and Basquali with his amazing photography and his Super 8 and whatnot. We America's captured pretty beautifully, I'd say, in the whole film. So it's a road trip across America. You come along for the ride, and you see America and you meet the people of America, and you got myself and Basquali sort of taking you by the hand, which is, well, it's probably cause for concern, but it's a fun ride,
I was really taken back by, I believe the gentleman's name was Joe, the singer. That guy can sing. His life experience definitely came out of his mouth. I mean, I didn't expect for him to be that, and he was actually very dialed, very intuitive about his world and his town, etc. Even though he was, in and out of being, homeless, etc.
He's definitely got the gift of gab. There's no denying that. He's
also got the knowledge to back it up. I mean, the guy's extremely,
absolutely,
insightful and knowledgeable and intelligent and aware. And one of the things I loved about him was that, he had that great knowledge and insight and education and whatnot. And yet, one of the beautiful things he talks about, Tathagata, the feeling of your feet inside your shoes, the Sanskrit word. And, he says when he sings in front of an audience and everything's at one and everything's just present, that's the best feeling in the world. That's the best feeling in the world, and that presence, that, stillness, that moment of just clarity that we can all experience from time to time. That's when shit's good. And you don't necessarily have to have $1 million in your pocket to enjoy those moments,
Right.
And that's what he talks about. He says, I live like the sparrow. If I've got money in my pocket, I've got it. If I ain't, I ain't. But in the meantime, the best feeling in the world is when I just sit there and sing in front of people and everyone's at one, And that's what really, when a lot of the things we're exploring in this film is like, what do we think it is that makes us happy? Because a lot of the time we're thinking it's a big house and a big car and all those things that personify the American dream, materialism and consumption. And you know what? The worst thing sometimes is to have all that, because you get the biggest disappointment ever, because that's not where happiness necessarily lies. It can help, and of course it eases some issues and all the rest of it. But if you think that's the only thing that will make you happy, then you'd be, horribly disappointed when you get that. And that's why you see, hugely successful people even more unhappy than people without, quote-unquote success, because they get this quote-unquote success and they realize it's got nothing to do with happiness. And someone like John Worley just summed up the whole thing. He's saying, you just sit there and play some music, and you see that with his gran as well, in the poverty really that they live in. That moment where she plays the music from their grandchildren in front of him, and we just sit with them for a minute or two and just listen to this beautiful music. That's happiness.
What was the time frame from New York to L.A. at the end of the day? What did that look like, and how exhausted were you when you finally hit L.A.?
That's a good question. It was 28 days. It was 4 weeks.
Oh wow.
I think we were pretty knackered, weren't we, Basquali? I think there was a certain relief at getting to LA, and we worked it. We were at it every waking moment for 4 weeks. We'd wake up about 7 in the morning, get on the road. We would drive by back roads during the day to just really get a taste of the country, interview people, photograph stuff. And then at night, once the light went down, we'd get some miles under our belt and end up in a motel at about 11 o'clock, midnight. So it was pretty full on, and God, it was cold as well. Jeez, it was cold out there. And when we got to LA and the sun was shining and we finished the whole thing, it definitely was. There was a nice. Yeah, it was not a sense of achievement, but
the word you're looking for is relief.
I think there was relief, yeah. It's like, wow, we made it. But, to be honest, Guy, looking back on it, in the years that it's taken to make the film, the filming bit was a walk in the park compared to the rest of it,
Right.
You suddenly go, okay, we're going to make this film, are we? I mean, Basquali and I looked at each other, went, okay, well, let's make this film. Okay, well, what do we do now? We get a cameraman and sound, and we'll hire a van, and off we go. And, that was kind of pretty much it. And but the years since we finished it, and that's when Cameron came on board and has been so invaluable, and Elisa Pugliese as well, and the other producers, and people that just materialize out of nowhere that suddenly get you through the next stage of creating the film. Because shooting it, to be honest, that was kind of like, it seems like now that was the easy bit, compared to the actual producing of it, editing of it, and everything since then. But there's a strange thing that happens, suddenly the right music composer pops up, and suddenly the right, producer pops up, and strange things sort of fall into place. And we're very grateful for the many aspects of that did, when it did happen. There's some amazing people got us through this whole thing.
I've often throughout the process thought that this film is quite a bit like Blanche. It has benefited at every turn from the kindness of strangers. Whenever we've needed something or someone, as if by magic, it or they have appeared, and just the ability to put one foot in front of the other and complete this and essentially give birth to it and present it to the world. has benefited at every turn from meeting strangers who have since become friends, whether it be our attorney or our music supervisor or people like that, people who've just appeared out of nowhere and helped us to get where we need to be.
Well, I think one of the reasons for that as well is that because, you know, we wanted to make an uplifting film that in tough times showed that with the right spirit, you know, you can get through these tough times. And it was the Americans that showed us the right spirit, the people that we spoke with. You know, they showed us. And, you know, it's clearly, you know, America is going through a tough time, but with the spirit of the American people, we'll get through it. And ultimately, we want to, you know, we believe that, and that's what will happen. And so we wanted to make an uplifting, inspiring film. And people recognize that when they see it, and they feel good when they see it. And it is essentially, you know, it is a strange new genre. It's called the feel-good documentary, I guess. And, you know, one of the taglines, you know, fall in love with America again. And I think that's what people do with the film, and all those strangers along the way that have helped us. You know, they fall in love with the film because they realize they're falling in love with America again, and Americans, and the American spirit. And I think that's why it's been contagious, and why people have been so keen to help us. And now it's out there, you know, on Hulu and Amazon, and, you know, and people can press a button and watch this film, and hopefully they'll enjoy it as much as we've enjoyed making it, you know.
I think people are going to absolutely enjoy and be surprisingly shocked by what they see from their fellow Americans at the end of the day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Surprisingly shocked. I like that.
As an African American, you know, I noticed some of the neighborhoods you guys happened to stroll through, and, you know, those were pretty tough neighborhoods. Just FYI, very tough.
we did end up in a few. There was one. I only remember this the other day. Actually, when we were at the Carmel Festival, and there was a Q&A afterwards, and somebody asked us about something, and I'd forgotten that we did kind of run out of one neighborhood pretty sharpish when it's in the film where the dogs that are behind the fence are attacking the Rottweiler in front of the fence. Well, and then the dog got all bloody nosed and everything.
Oh boy, yes.
And as the guy went off, I was just left there standing at a fence with these two dogs with a bloody nose, and the owner, the house guy, came out literally in his underpants, a white beater, and a what do you call him? Mohawk?
Mullet?
Mohawk. A mullet. Yeah, a mullet.
Oh, mullet.
And not to judge him in any way whatsoever, but he was angry. And I said, I'm so sorry, sir, but when your dog seems to have cut his nose a little bit, you know, what the beep are you doing in my beep yard? Beep out of here. And then he walked off back into the house, and I thought there's only one thing he's coming out of that house with, and I don't want to be around when he does. So I just remember running across the road to Basquali and the guys in the van and being like, get the hell out of here quick. And that was one pretty dodgy little neighborhood. But we did go into a few, but you know what? It was all right. You know, you just talk to people, just look them in the eye and, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. The cameras help at times at times. You know, the camera can be a nice little, it can have that Pied Piper effect, or it can have the opposite effect. I noticed the guy, the gentlemen that were behind at the Martin Luther King Memorial that were, you know, doing the, old school excavating with the metal detectors were a little taken back by the cameras, but you still hung in there.
Well, it was that. Well, it's weird, and yeah, it was a strange correlation in that they were the ones taken back by it, and then they had the views that they had. So I don't know, there's some strange link there.
The woman that was right before Ronald McDonald, she was also one of my favorites. She had a lot to say.
Berenice.
Yes, and so
she lived a pretty full life, that lady.
Yeah, I mean, her energy was
one thing that I love about Berenice is she, without giving it away too much, she likes to express the numerous ways in which she spends her time and her numerous achievements. But what she gets to add to one of them now is movie star.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's true.
And you know what? And I'm not going to give anything away, but I will say this. I know we're getting a little tight on time, but I did like the way that the gentleman articulated himself in regards to the Walmarts moving in and kind of pushing everybody out. He was very well spoken as well, and he had an agenda, but it was I think what he spoke about was pretty dead on.
Well, there's something. There was I remember reading something once. It was about the lawyers in the lawyer in Ecuador who was up against all the won't name the name, but very large oil company and lawsuits that were being fought, and he took on all these huge corporate lawyers, and he won the case. And they said, "How the hell did you beat these big, huge corporate lawyers?" And he said, "The truth isn't hard to remember. The truth is just the truth." And so, it's what works. You know what I mean? It's simple. You don't need to be a genius to say the truth. And, whether he's a genius or not, all Travis was saying in that moment was the truth. This is what's happening. The corporations are coming in and doing this, and I'm a small business owner, and I, along with others that I get, are being, pushed out of the business community and the local community. And he was very eloquent about it because it's his truth. I mean, he didn't have. It's simple, and that's what him and a lot of these, small business owners in small places are going through. And then communities are being, dismantled basically by, huge corporate forces, and he expressed the truth of what was going on there, and that was his view.
Yeah, no, I thought it was just very. I mean, he hit the hammer right on the nail. I don't see that situation, unfortunately, getting any better because I think the Walmarts are doing what they're doing. To reiterate what I spoke about before, I loved what you guys did. My wife and I took a trip of 2,000. We went dive bar hopping, 2,000 miles. We stopped in every small town and went dive bar hopping. And
damn, why didn't we do that?
But we didn't film it or anything like that. So I'm glad you guys were intuitive enough to put something like that together because. I walked into a bar in Montana, and I think the music stopped. And but the reality of it is by the time I finished my my 2 or 3 Maker's Marks on the rocks, I was best friends with everybody in that bar. So
wow, there you go.
Yeah, I thought the experience was just absolutely awesome. Going from a very near Seattle, Washington, all the way up through Montana. I mean, it's some pretty interesting people. So.
Guy. One of the things about This American Journey is that there are people in the film who articulate specifically that there's one woman who articulates that is in fact her goal is to have those kinds of experiences. So it's nice that this film can resonate with people like you, and I think it has resonated with a lot of the people who've seen it because it's not about Paul and Basquali, these two foreigners, telling Americans what they're supposed to think and feel. It's about them discovering Americans and allowing them to reveal to us as Americans that there are people out there who think and feel the same way that we do.
I thought it was brilliant. So,
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for that, for coming along to see it, and then supporting it in the way that you're doing now as well. We do appreciate that, Guy.
Oh.
It's in the scope of all the movies that are released out there and all the rest of it. We don't have some big advertising budget or anything like that. We're just relying on, Facebook likes and friending pages and tweeting and, spreading the word like that and through things like you're doing now with the radio and whatever way we can. So your support's hugely appreciated. You've become the kindness of another stranger. Thank you.
The kindness of another stranger, which is also tough to do when you don't have a single explosion. Nothing blew up in this film.
Yeah.
So yeah,
well,
if you
the Super 8 camper did a couple of times, I think, but apart from that.
Well, you almost had.
The film's called This American Journey. If you're listening to this, and you can watch it, you can get it on DVD through Amazon, or you can watch it on Hulu. And if you like it, tell your friends.
And also you can buy it through thisamericanjourney.com, and we would love it if people would like our Facebook page, This American Journey.
Love it. Well, look, guys, I want to thank you for stopping by the Guy Boudreaux Radio Show. and maybe we'll get together and do some stuff on video, or maybe face-to-face stuff, do some cocktails, social hour, whatever. But I enjoyed...
Definitely. Guy will definitely be up for that. We'll definitely do that at some point. It'd be good to come in and do something with the camera and all the rest of it. So we're going to have some fun with that.
Okay. That sounds good, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. And
one last thing. We'll be at the Ojai Film Festival on November 9th, which is a Saturday. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we're playing at 8 p.m.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Give me that information. Oh. Give me that information. I'll make sure it's on my Facebook page.
Okay. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
All right, enjoy the night. That's it for the Guy Boudreau Radio Show. This is Anything and Everything. I'm Guy Boudreau, and now I'm going to leave you with the soulful sounds of Mr. John Worley and his band Cornbread.
Down on you like a knife. I just want you to know I'm a calm sucker. You'll always be in my life. She walked on down to the den of breathing, and took the counsel from a fearless strain with a great big grin. Oh, in the middle of the night, well, I guess down on you like a giant. I want you to take your sling like David, and I want you to cast that stone as you walk on down. Want you to look out, loves you and so do I. Oh, in the middle of the night, well, I guess down on you like a giant. I want you to take your sling like baby, baby. Go on and cast that stone. Just like me, Shack, Shadow, Rack, and I'm building ghosts, and then a furnace talking about a hot tin, a coal fire. I got your drink of water right here.